the peeps close to me and dear to me, the ones that's been there for my whole life, the ones that came later in my life, yeah. I appreciate all the blessings God has given me, and I want to repay it to you like this. Clap your hands. Everybody clap your hands.
Not be higher. Trump says if he wins, you won't have to vote anymore. Tonight, we are laying out the dangers of Project 2025, the manifesto that would give him that authoritarian power, limit your rights, and force you and your family to change the way you live your life. And we begin this special episode of The Readout tonight with a dire warning for our democracy. Over the next hour, I will lay out the greatest threat to the American democratic experiment in modern times. And it's called Project 2025. With just 99 days till Election Day, and with voting starting a lot sooner than that in some states, like Pennsylvania, where early voting begins in September, it is imperative that every American understand what Project 2025 is about and how it would affect every single one of us if it was ever enacted. Tonight is just the first of many nights where we will dig into this dangerous plan. And I really want you to listen, learn, take notes, and share it with everyone you know. And if you look on your screen, you'll notice that QR code where you can find our segments on Project 2025 so you can share them. So let's start with the basics. This is the 922-page MAGA manifesto. We printed the whole thing out, and it's brought to you by one of the most conservative D.C. think tanks, the Heritage Foundation. This is the culmination of nearly 50 years of work that began during the Reagan administration. Broadly, according to Heritage President Kevin Roberts, this is a Christian nationalist plan to end what he calls the Great Awakening and, quote, rescue our kids, reclaim our culture, revive our economy, and defeat the anti-American left at home and abroad. This manifesto, which they call a book, is a specific roadmap on how to accomplish that by giving a Republican president unprecedented power. They do that by slashing the federal government's footprint, gutting regulations, slashing the money we spend on children, students, the elderly, the environment, education, and reproductive health care.
Okay, I don't think Americans, enough are really reading this, especially the people that these kind of reforms will hit and affect first, because we have this tendency in the U.S. To be a little frustrated with the media, and not just in the U.S., just in the Western world, you could say. We get a lot, but we always don't get the best, you could say, journalism going on. But this is one time where people need to understand it's very serious, and you need to read. Take the time to read for yourself, but you won't if you don't take the alarm bells seriously. So the link is here. You can also Google Project 2025. This is a Democratic pact, I believe, or organization that is explaining it to you, each chapter step by step, but you can get the original because it's on the Heritage Foundation's website. It can be downloaded. So it's the same information. I've pretty much checked it all out myself. For me, my reading comprehension level is pretty high, so I can use either one, but I just put this one in this time for folks to check out. So please read it, and be aware of what you're voting for this election cycles.
Every single chapter describes in excruciating detail how to reorder our society by dismantling federal agencies and limiting the federal government's ability to help protect you, the American people, from predatory businesses, excessive taxes, poisoned air and water, you name it. Lately, former President Donald Trump and his campaign, fearful of how unpopular Project 2025 is, have claimed they have nothing to do with it.
I don't know what the hell it is. It's Project 25. He's involved in Project. And then they read some of the things, and they are extreme. I mean, they're seriously extreme. But I don't know anything about it. I don't want to know anything about it.
Yeah, but that's not the complete picture. Here is Trump promoting the Heritage Foundation.
And it's also, it's also promoting, what he just did was promote ignorance. He's like, I don't know anything about it. I don't want to know anything about it. I mean, the man is extremely phobic, and he's feeding into people that have phobias, and all types of people have phobias. Republicans, Democrats, phobias are just something that people have about things they don't really understand. So they either choose to research and understand those things more, or they choose to shut it out and block it out. And Trump is a prime example of how he feeds into people that want to shut out things. They don't want to be confronted with information,
And their little project just 2 years ago.
Heritage does such an incredible job, and they're going to lay the groundwork and detail plans for exactly what our movement will do and what your movement will do when the American people give us a colossal mandate to.
Now, look, isn't that what he just did? He did the same thing with Jeffrey Epstein. He spoke publicly about Jeffrey Epstein, about how he's his friend, 15 years, how he's a great guy, how he likes him young. And then when he ran for office and Epstein, all of a sudden, or when he became president and Epstein, I believe it was just before he became president, either one. But when Epstein's got busted, then all of a sudden, he don't know Epstein, hasn't seen him for years, don't know nothing about it.
Yeah, but that's not the complete picture. Here is Trump promoting the Heritage Foundation and their little project just 2 years ago.
Heritage does such an incredible job, and they're going to lay the groundwork and detail plans for exactly what our movement will do and what your movement will do when the American people give us a colossal mandate to save America. And that's coming. That's coming.
And what do you think the colossal mandate is? He's talking about the election. That's the only mandate that can come. That's how mandates come, through elections, in the U.S. And as you can clearly hear, he knows something about it. He knows the people. He knows they were putting together an agenda. And now all of a sudden that the agenda is out, you don't know nothing about it and don't want to know nothing about it.
Here's the other truth. Roughly 140 individuals who worked in Trump's administration are affiliated with Project 2025, including 6 former cabinet secretaries and 4 people who were nominated as ambassadors by Trump. The others were either key figures from his first transition, close Oval Office allies, or mid-level agency officials. There's Russell Vought, Trump's former Office of Management and Budget Director, who wrote Chapter 2 in the section titled Taking the Reins of Federal Government. In this chapter, he lays out how to consolidate power around a president's political vision. He explains how you can bypass Congress and only fund projects that ensure consistency with the president's agenda. He is rumored to be Trump's choice for chief of staff. And according to Politico, he and Trump speak once a month. Vought hopes his close relationship with Trump will elevate Christian nationalism as a focal point of a second Trump administration. Then there's Roger Severino, a former Trump administration DOJ official, who wrote Chapter 14 about the Department of Health and Human Services and how to restrict abortion access across the country. Severino is a dogmatic anti-abortion militant.
Now, here's an interesting part for a lot of people that have heard of the Eugenics Society. Early in the Eugenics Society, abortion became an issue. And what they did was kind of target minority communities with abortion specifically, right? Because they did have a racial archetype that they wanted to uphold, right? And you hear people talking about that. A lot of people that are anti-abortion that are Black, at times they tend to quote that. But here's the thing that they might be missing. Abortion laws have changed. They're just, since that period, since the beginning of the Eugenics Society, since the introduction of abortion by, funding of the state or fundings in the US right now. Here's the thing about it. Today, there's people that are supporting Project 2025 that are actually planning, they're actually planning on targeting people in the same racial archetype in many different ways. Check it out.
Who strongly believes that an America that allows abortion cannot survive.
The federal government has an absolute role in this. There cannot be now two Americas. One America where unborn life is protected and another where unborn life is treated as the equivalent of medical waste.
Yeah.
Right. That is untenable. This has to be settled nationally. A house divided against itself cannot stand.
Yeah.
We can't have two classes of Americans.
In Project 2025, he advocates for using the regulatory powers of the Department of Health and Human Services, the Food and Drug Administration, and the Department of Justice and the National Institutes of Health to end access to mifepristone, prohibit stem cell research, and create, quote, pro-life task force in the White House. There's also Richard Hanania, who helped contribute to Project 2025. Now, he's not a recognizable name, but he's a popular conservative activist with fans like J.D. Vance, Peter Thiel, and Elon Musk, who just so happens to be a noted racist and sexist. The Huffington Post reported that Hanania used a fake pen name to write articles and social media posts that expressed support for eugenics and forced sterilization of, quote, low IQ people.
You see? So this is really an expansion. Now, keep in mind, originally the Eugenics Society, it wasn't about abortion specifically. That wasn't it. It was about finding different ways to eliminate Black people, minorities from many aspects of society. Check this out. And based on the idea that they are racially inferior. Check this.
Whom he argued were most often Black.
What did he say? Richard Hanania, rising right-wing star, wrote for the white supremacist site under the pseudonym, right? He expressed support for eugenics and forced sterilization of low IQ people who he argued were most often Black. He opposed the miscegenation and race mixing. Now, I don't know why that wouldn't bother a Black voter or a minority voter. And keep in mind, eugenics, although it's been used as a face to kind of blanket abortion as being something, targeted at specifically Black people or minorities, right? But here's another look at it. I mean, what is sterilization then? What's that? Isn't that reproductive health care? Sterilization? Isn't that what that is? Isn't that tampering with your body? Isn't that what that is? To stop you from being able to have children. So here's the thing. You can't have your cake and eat it too. People really need to dig into this right now, currently, themselves, read, comprehend what's going on right now, and not what happened in the turn of the century in the 1900s when the Eugenics Society first emerged. Of course, they're problematic, but abortion is not necessarily explicitly a eugenics society thing. But sterilization, what's that about? You okay with that? You against abortion, but you okay with sterilization? I don't get it. But this is for Trump voters specifically. Check out what you're voting for.
And he dreamed about a white awakening, which is when whites en masse realize that they are superior to non-whites and that they'd be better off abandoning multiracial democracy for something resembling a whites-only ethno-state. While those guys are cooking up plans for how the government would work and who it would work for.
In other words, they want to make the United States of America more homogenous. And ironically enough, they claim that they're against EU states, but EU states, for the most part, are more homogenous, have less diversity ethnically than you could say the United States. The United States is unique in the Western world. It's unique in NATO, right? For having diversity and being the most powerful country with the most diversity on earth, right? And here you have them, they constantly talk about, oh, socialism, even though socialism doesn't really exist in Europe, it's social democracy that exists where you get social benefits from your tax dollars like housing, insurance, universal health care, paid education, these for everybody, technical school or university. These are the things that's happening in European societies today, right? Western European societies versus who are homogenous now. Keep that in mind. I mean, think about that. Think about the detail. If they're arguing for a more homogenous USA, which means an ethno state, right? Basically, white people in this particular example. But what do you think they would do if they had that ethno state? All of a sudden, my prediction would be all of a sudden, it's okay to have universal health care if it's more homogenous. It's okay to have paid education if it's a more homogenous society. It's okay to have all these things for one particular group of people. The problem begins when it's diverse groups of people that have access to these things. That's really what they're arguing against.
John McEntee, Trump's former body man and former director of his presidential personnel office, is working with Project 2025 to build the enforcement army. He is currently a senior advisor at Project 2025 with the single task of creating a resume database of dedicated MAGA warriors to staff up every agency. Well, the ones that they don't shutter completely, like the Department of Education, on day one. Here's what McEntee wrote when he took the job. Quote, "The presidential personnel database will be of extraordinary value for the 47th president because we are doing a lot of the incoming administration's most important work ahead of time," unquote. Then there is Trump's running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, a self-described radicalized Republican who is a champion of Kevin Roberts and his plan to turn the Heritage Foundation into the de facto institutional home of Trumpism. Here you see Vance and Roberts together on a panel last year at an event hosted by the Intercollegiate Institute, which is a conservative organization for college students. This particular discussion was about regime change and the future of liberalism. Guess what else? Kevin Roberts has a book coming out in September, and J.D. Vance wrote the foreword to that book in which he praises Roberts' vision for America. He also wrote, "We are now all realizing that it's time to circle the wagons and load the muskets. In the fights that lay ahead, these ideas are an essential weapon." Vance's current political ideology lines up pretty succinctly with that of Project 2025, and his backing of Kevin Roberts, along with his frequent appearances on Tucker Carlson's talk show, might explain why he is on the Trump ticket. This clip from his Senate campaign run might also have helped too.
I think that what Trump should do, like if I was giving him one piece of advice, fire every single mid-level bureaucrat, every civil servant in the administrative state, replace them with our people. Yeah, I mean, I think we got to do the hard work of institution building. And again, I've got friends who are working on this very problem right now, such that if there is a Trump administration round 2 or a DeSantis or a Hawley administration, that we actually have the bureaucracy in place so that that person can govern effectively and not be constantly undercut.
Trump, Vance, future staffers, future administration officials, and all of his former employees support parts or all of Project 2025. Do we really think that they would not implement these ideas if given the chance? Up next, I will detail for you explicitly the things they intend to do, from redirecting how we see ourselves socially, how we build our society, how we get by, and most importantly, and the one I worry about the most, how they will completely end how government functions, leaving a less safe, less prosperous, less free country for the majority of Americans.